Good morning, Mr. Raymond. Thank you for so much for joining me today. To begin, could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your journey to working in the UK? What motivated you to leave Malaysia?
Firstly, thank you for inviting me to do this. It's very lovely. My name is Raymond. I'm currently working in the private sector of the finance industry in the United Kingdom, and I've been here for 3 years, 3 years now. Yeah, and one of the main reasons that I wanted to work in the UK was to gain international exposure and experience a nice, completely different working culture. And I wanted to challenge myself outside my comfort zone and see how organizations overseas, operate in a way I can learn in a way I can implement here in Malaysia, hopefully in the next 10 years or so. So before moving here, I honestly thought the biggest challenge for me was to be speaking English, but however, I was wrong. Very wrong, by the way. I actually started realizing this after I been working in the company for 3 months, and I can assure you the language wasn't the biggest problem at all, or wasn't the biggest challenge at all. The biggest challenge was understanding a different way of working and adapting to their way of speaking in a different workplace culture. Working in the UK really has changed my perspective because I had the opportunity to work with colleagues from different countries because UK is around the same as Malaysia, as you know, because there's so many religions there, a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different cultures. Every day I learn something new, not only about work, but also about how people communicate in the UK, solve problems, and build relationships. Looking back now, I think coming to UK was one of the best decisions I made by far because it helped me grow by I don't know, professionally a lot and personally. So yeah, that'll be for your question.
That's really interesting because many people think that language is the biggest challenge, but it sounds like cultural adaptation had a much bigger impact on your experience. So next, looking back now, what surprised you the most about working in UK? Could you share the biggest difference compared with working in Malaysia?
The biggest difference in the UK working culture, yeah, I'll say in the biggest difference in UK working culture will be the trust and the flexibility, rather than very strict control compared to Malaysia. When I first joined the company, I expected my managers to not monitor me constantly, closely. Instead, I found that people were given a lot of freedom as long they completed their work responsibly and effectively. But for example, on the working normal hours, like around in Malaysia, we have a 9 to 5, but nobody forces everyone to arrive exactly at 9 o'clock. But man, just does many people travel by train, public transport, bicycle, or sometime car or anything, bus, something like that, even run to work. So sometimes trains does delay or unexpected issue does come out. So if someone arrives at 9:15, I'll give you an example here. I'll give you an example because if their train is delayed, the managers won't immediately like question you wherever you're late. They care much more about whether if your work is completed in a way, whenever if you you're committed to it, and have you communicated the situation properly with the team manager just to let them know about how your situation is based on the time. If the mornings are difficult for you, you can arrange 10 to 6 p.m. It's totally flexible. There's no fixed time like compared to in Malaysia. There's those sort of things. So if you need to pick up your child or have family responsibilities, you can even discuss to have a hybrid working arrangements. So basically, hybrid is basically you can work from home, but from time to time you have to need to go to the company. So that's how it works. So I personally take hybrid sometimes because where I live and where my company is a bit far. So sometimes I just have to communicate with my managers and I have to work from home to a few days. So everything is just really based on communication. So as long as you discuss it properly and you continue to deliver whatever work that was given to you completely done and well communicated, there's no issue for this kind of things. So another difference that I can compare from UK and Malaysia is the permanent employees don't clock in or clock out on day because the only contractor is that they need to record their working hours. Because they're paid on based on hours they work, so you have to record it personally. You have to just write it down personally and submit the ticket to your managers. They will just take note. So I also noticed that the performance evaluations are based on your overall contribution. Work results are not whenever you're late or your stay late once. It's more, for example, being late is because your train was delayed or won't affect your annual performance review or your bonus. So that's a very good thing in the UK. Likewise, staying late in the office every day doesn't mean you'll get a better evaluation from the managers because they prefer you go back early. They prefer you can go back early, take your rest, whatever you do, just don't stay in the office. That's the UK culture. So it's very strange. I know. So I would suggest you to come to UK to work. So how the managers does, evaluate your working condition is basically managers look at your overall performance, your attitude, your teamwork, and the quality of your work. It's not simply just counting the amount of hours you spend in the office. It's very different what we are used to in Malaysia because the more hours you work, the more you're paid. Usually that's how it works. In Malaysia, you're clearly late. then you don't make up the time for it. Your salary just maybe deducted in a way or some sorts. In UK, from my experience, I rarely heard about very rarely heard about salary employees of having their pay deducted because of their occasional lateness. Hourly pay workers might be different because they're paid on working hours. But for permanent employees, the main focus is much on the trust and responsibility. They don't really care about your hour or so. And I also heard about people losing their jobs. It wasn't because they arrived late, it was more of a serious attitude issue, such as offensive language, throwing keyboards in anger, or behaving in the ways that it affects the rest of the team. That really showed me that companies care more about professionalism, attitude, and respect, and rather than just simply watching the clock, just to pay less compared to Malaysia. So yeah, that's more my question.
I really like what you mentioned because it sounds like the company measures success by result rather than the attendance. It also shows the manager trusts employees to manage their own responsibility instead of relying on strict rules.
Hmm.
So next, from what you share, it sounds like the working environment in the UK is quite different from Malaysia. Could you tell us more about how people build relationship at work and how this working culture had influenced your daily life?
Okay, that's a great question. Absolutely. One thing that surprised me the most was how friendly everyone was. When in Malaysia, right, people tend to be quiet or just don't want to join you for some certain reasons. But when I first joined my company, I expected people, everyone to finish their work and immediately go home. Instead, I found that every Friday, my co-workers, they will organize a small gathering after work. So it's basically like a bonding kind of a thing. But instead, usually someone just go to send in a message in our group saying that I'm interested to drink after work. At first, I didn't really want to join because I don't drink. I'm not an alcoholic person. So I mainly thought it was for those people who drank alcohol. Then later I realized I completely misunderstood their intention. It was actually has nothing to do with the drinking. Some colleague does drink, okay, in a bar. Some drink wine, some just order Coke or just coffee or juice sometimes. Nobody really cares what they're drinking. The most important thing that what they're trying to achieve out of this, aside from their work, they like to spend time, chatting with people. In the funny thing about UK people is that they really like to chat a lot. Uh, so they always, come for me to ask for, cup of mate. So basically just mean that a cup of beer, basically just a cup of anything, a cup of tea or anything. And this gathering, we very rarely talk about work. Sometimes we don't even talk about work. Instead, we just talk about traveling, football. The UK is a big fan of football, foods, or family hobbies. What we planning to do over the weekend. Sometimes we go golf during the weekends, and everyone is very very relaxed and very approachable. Those casual conversations just actually makes a huge difference. So basically, when Monday comes, communication does makes to be easier in a way because you know so much about the colleague, you tend to communicate more and more and more a lot. So it tends to already build trust and friendship outside the office. So I also noticed there's much less politics compared to what people imagine in the UK. So people focus on finishing their work efficiently during hours, and they are very strict to work finish until your work is done in the office hours. So everyone just respect their each personal time. This isn't a culture of competing or with colleagues or trying to impress the managers just by doing a lot. It doesn't really work that way in the UK like it does in Malaysia. So yeah, I think that's my end to your question.
That's really interesting. It sounds like those Friday gatherings aren't just social events. They actually help to build trust and improve teamwork.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one reason why communication feel natural here is because the other thing that I really appreciate the work-life balance. If there's isn't any urgent work, nobody expects you to stay back and work overtime just because it's a Friday afternoon. Managers would rather you finish your work efficiently and go home to enjoy your weekend. So there's something called a Good Friday. So a lot of UK people or you can say locals there, they like to respect the Good Friday thing a lot. So managers will just they told me there's no culture of staying late or work or look working hard in a way. After work, I almost never no never I never receive any messages about work from my managers or my colleagues. It's a genuine emergency. Everyone respect personal each and personal time. Even when someone is on an annual leave, managers don't expect them to, keep checking the emails or replying the work messages like in Malaysia. So that's one thing that I wasn't used to. Even though we're out, sometimes I'm on a annual leave or I'm checking or I'm going out with my relatives. I always check my messages. So that's the most big difference I'm not used to yet.
That's really sound like a healthy working environment. I've also heard that people in Europe travel a lot. Is that true in your workplace?
Yes, definitely. The travel is a huge part of our lifestyle here because sorry, in the UK we have pound. It's very big, so everywhere we go is considered cheap. So that's why a lot of flights around Europe is surprisingly affordable due to the pound. Sometimes you have to find flights for less than £100. So much traveling during the weekends is a very common thing, especially when it's close to Europe's we let's say Ireland or the US or wherever places or Italy. So sometimes I heard colleagues, bring a suitcase to the office on a Friday because they are flying straight after work. Personally, I usually apply to work on just from on Friday. I finish my work in the afternoon, and sometimes I just head directly to the airport. But sometimes my colleagues organize short weekend trips, especially during the ski season, which is very common in the UK because we snow a lot. There's a lot of seasons here. So what's funny is that after coming back on Monday, some people are already buying tickets for the following weekend because they enjoy the trip so much. I think that's something quite different from Malaysia that you would expect, because in Malaysia people hesitate to share their holidays because they're worried others might say, "Wow, you have a lot of money, going out, always go play." Just to say, if you're in KL, just sometimes you go bar every day, people just say you're rich. So there can always be jealousy or negative comments, whatever it is from Malaysians. But in the UK, I don't really experience that. It doesn't happen. So people are really genuinely happy for you because you're able to go out, enjoy this, enjoy that. People are genuinely happy for you instead of judging you and ask where you're going or recommend places, even suggest planning for you another trip together with them. Nobody thinks you're showing off in the UK. I really like that positive mindset. So yeah, that's the end for your question. I'll say.
That's really interesting culture difference. It sounds like people celebrate each other happiness rather than comparing themselves with other.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that really impressed me was the annual leave policy that the UK have. It's a statutory policy that the state of the United Kingdom installed for us, uh, for the whole England. So most employees receive around 22 to 25 days annual leave per year. Okay, so I personally I get 28 days because we are in the private finance sector. Yeah, we tend to get a lot of benefits and tend to get slightly above a bit more annual leave than other companies that may receive. So as you stay longer with the company, your annual leave just can gradually increase to more than 30 days. So I'm at 28 days of annual leave. It might increase until to, I think the most I have in the colleague was 35 days. He's been working in the company for 20 years now, I think 20 years, and he has an annual leave of 35 days. Of course, you don't usually just take all 25 days at one because you still need to consider your projects and your team workloads. So if your teams are okay with it, then you can take the whole 35 days off or 28 days off. But most people just take 1 or 2 times a week, especially when you have 25 days, you can use it all at once. So if you don't use all your annual leave, many companies allow you to carry some of it forward the following year. So if I have 28 days, if I bring forward to 28 days, so that's basically 56 days I have in my annual leave. So I also seen colleagues who save most of their annual leave so they can enjoy 3 or 4 weeks off during the summer holiday, which we have in the UK. What impressed me was it wasn't just the number of the leave days, it was paid leave. 28 paid leave. In Malaysia, we won't get 10, not even 10, not even 6 days. So it's a bamboozlement when I came to UK. So it was the people that really encouraged me to take people, my managers encouraged me to take my annual leave days. But so they don't make you feel guilty for taking a holiday. Managers don't expect you to answer the emails or messages while you're away. And when you're on leave, you're just generally on leave. They won't disturb you or anything like that.
I think that's something many Malaysia would really admire because in some workplace, people still worry about checking email or replying the message even during their holiday.
I agree because like I said, even as a Malaysian, I came to UK. I've been working for 3 years. I still look at my phone messages constantly because it's a life habit. For one final example that really impressed me in our company was before the public holidays. Let's say if the next day is a public holiday, our CEO of the company, in the private finance bank sector, the CEO often sends an email to everyone. Everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a cleaner in the company. It doesn't matter you're a bartender or a coffee maker or anything like that. He just sends something like, feel free to shut down your PC early and enjoy the holiday with your family and friends. It's a small gesture from the CEO himself, but it shows that the company it genuinely values the employees' well-being instead of experience them to keep working them until the last minutes every day like we do in Malaysia. But looking back, the biggest lesson that I learned in the UK was the work is only one part of my life. Work should support your life, not become your entire life. That's basically what I learned. So when people have time to rest, travel, and spend time with your family or enjoy their hobbies, they actually return to work happier the next day, which I kind of enjoy. So it's much more productive in a way.
Okay, thank you so much. For next, listening to all this experience, it seemed that working in the UK really changed your perspective on work and communication. Looking back now, how have this experience influenced your personal and was there anything that took time for you to adapt to?
Adapt to, yeah, definitely. I think the biggest adjustment wasn't learning how to do my job. It's more on learning how to trust the work culture in the UK. When I first arrived, I still had the mindset of I developed in Malaysia. Basically, for example, if I finish my work early, I will still stay in the office because I felt bad. You know, even my seniors haven't go back. If I go back early, that just make me look lazy. So I also worry that if I arrive late because my train was delayed, people might think that I wasn't responsible in the work. And however, after working here for some time, I realized that nobody was judging me based on how long I stay in the office or whether if I arrive on 9 o'clock. Instead, people just judge me based on whether I completed my work or communicated properly, honestly, and how well I work with the team. And that completely changed my understanding of the professionalism of the UK. And another thing I had to adapt was the speaking up during the meetings. At first, I was quite quiet because I was used to waiting for instructions from my managers. But manager often encouraged me to share their own opinions and they have their own mindset of the thinking. Even if my idea wasn't the perfect one, they still appreciated that I was contributing to the discussion. Giving them some thought. That gave me so much confidence that over time I also became more comfortable talking and sharing openly with my managers and my team. For example, I needed to work from home because of a personal matter, or if I had any difficulties with my workload. I learned that it's perfectly capable or and acceptable to discuss it honestly with your supervisors or your managers instead of being criticized by your managers. Uh, they just asked me, how can we make this work? So that kind of communication really does make me feel trusted and very, very respected in a way. So looking back now, I think working in the UK has taught me some trust or something both employees and the employers build together through honest communication and mutual respect. That's the main difference and something I have to adapt to.
That's a really meaningful lesson. It sounds like adapting wasn't about changing who you are, but about understanding a different way of working and learning to communicate more openly.
Yeah, exactly. In a way, I also realized something else. Working overseas isn't about earning a higher salary or gaining international experience, like I said in the beginning. For me, it was about learning a different ways of thinking. When you work with people from a different country, they start to understand that there isn't a only correct way that you can manage people or run an organization. Different cultures have different values. A lot of those difference actually makes you reflect on your own habits and assumptions coming to an unfamiliar workplace. Different cultures have a different value, like UK and like Malaysia. And for many of those differences, it actually makes you reflect on your own habits. For example, before coming to UK, I thought I was, supposed to work longer hours. Yeah, I thought you're supposed to man by working more hours, it just meant that I'm more committed into the company. But now I believe that working efficiently and effectively doing working hours and having that full 100% output during the office hours and with your managers and your team is really the most important thing for them and for your family. And after when you're done with that, you can have the time for your family, your hobbies, or your personal well-being for the equally important thing personally. And I think that's the biggest mindset change that I experienced so far.
I really like that reflection because it shows the culture intelligence is not only about understanding other people, but also about becoming more aware of your own assumption and learning from different culture. Yeah. So finally, based on everything you have experienced, what advice would you give to Malaysian students who hope to work overseas one day? Also, what do you think organization can do to better support international employees and create a more inclusive workplace?
What would I suggest a student in Malaysia? An inclusive support workplace. If I could give one piece of advice, it would be open-minded. Yes, open-minded when it comes to United Kingdom, UK. You have to be very open-minded with people here. Many people think that working overseas is about improving a certain part of your English, or even, like I said, Dubai. Maybe it could be, improving your earnings in a way, a better income. But I think the most important skill is adaptability because every country has its own work culture. Even until you reach to any part of the world, communication style and expectation is completely different what you expect from online or some videos. But don't compare everything with Malaysia because just assume one way or the other, it's better, or instead be curious and observe and ask questions constantly and be willing to learn. Secondly, don't be a scaredy cat. Just don't be afraid to communicate. Always communicate. And if you're unsure about something, you have to ask. Really have to ask about it. And if you face any difficulty in your work or anything that let's say you just reached the country and you're having trouble communicating, you can always use a translator. It doesn't have to force you to be so scared that you don't have to do anything about it. Okay, so if you do face difficulties, discuss them with your manager early if you're in the company. In my experience, open communication build trust much faster than staying silent. Another important lesson is to build relationship through with your colleagues. Your colleagues is your best friend, later down the line. So it's very, very important to build relationships with your colleagues. And sometimes people think that social activities are unimportant, but joining team lunches and Friday drinks or gatherings, Good Friday really helped me understand my colleagues much better. Because those friendship make working together much easier. It's very easier for us to communicate through our work and sometimes we have events throughout the weekends or golf for organizations. I think there's three things that they can do in Malaysia. First, provide better onboarding and cultural orientations. New international employees are adapting to new country as well as a new job because I heard that Malaysia has been recently getting much better and better. There's a bit of foreigner investment into Malaysia. So introducing a local workplace expectation and communication lifestyle can help them settle in more quickly in a way. And secondly, encourage open communication and trust between managers and employees. The only thing I can suggest in Malaysia is managers in a certain company in Malaysia tends to be very strict about how they manage things. When it comes to local people, you can use it that way, but for international people, it's hard to use that Pacific method, the Pacific Malaysia method on international employees because it just doesn't work that way because they rather just not work. And I would say between the managers and the employees has to be a very open communication. People should feel comfortable asking questions, sharing ideas, be open, discussing the challenges, and without worry of being judged. That's what I get for working in the UK. And third, I would say creating opportunities for employees to connect outside work. Activities like I said, Friday creating the night bars, the team lunches, the events, company events to help from different culture behind to build general friendships and reduce misunderstandings and strengthen the teamwork, the networking within the company and all. And overall, you mentioned inclusive. Okay, so I will say an inclusive workplace isn't just about having employees from a different country. It's about creating an environment that everyone will feel respected and trusted in their own value in a way. So yeah, that's my inclusive part.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raymond, for sharing your experience with us today. I think today's conversation has shown that working overseas is much more than adapting to a new job. It's about learning to understand different culture, communication style, and ways of working. Your story about trust-based management, flexible working arrangement, work-life balance, annual leave, relationship building, and open communication have given us much clearer picture of what it is like to work in the UK. Most importantly, your experience reminds us that cultural intelligence is not simply about understanding another culture, it is about being willing to learn, adapt, and respect different perspectives. Thank you once again for your time. We wish you all the best in the future career.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
wish you all the best also, Wei Wei. So thank you.
Bye bye.